Welcome to the Blue Ocean Solutions podcast, where we dive into real conversation with business owners, innovators, and industry leaders helping to reshape clean technology, construction, and the renewable energy sectors. I'm Kreel Hutchinson, your host. Our podcast today is going to feature Brennan Beach, the Director of Sales for Advanced Powering Services Incorporated in the Southern California area. Today, we're going to discuss his unique value proposition for the replacement of inefficient old lead-acid battery packs in street cabinets with long-lasting, eco-friendly lithium-ion battery systems. If you're in the telecommunications and battery sectors, you will love this show. Welcome to the Blue Ocean Solutions podcast, Brennan. How are you doing today?
Thank you. Doing good. And thanks again very much for the invitation and the discussion.
Yeah, no problem. Excited to have it with you. So for our audience that may not know you or your role or your company, why don't you do a little bit of an introduction?
Yeah, so I work for Advanced Powering Services, Inc., and we target the telecommunications, cable TV providers down to the ISP as well, and get into broadband powering, all of the various providers, the MSOs that offer the internet service and the various communication that you need for being on the internet or your computer, even Netflix, all that fun stuff. And so there's a lot of opportunities in this world because most people will give up their car payment before they give up their cell phone or Netflix. And so it's a very secure industry, right? And so I'm director of sales for that company. They've been around for over 20 some years, and we are in about 17 different states, and we service different customers like Cox and Comcast and Charter, to name a few of the MSOs. And we have about almost 100 employees with a fleet of about 70 bucket trucks, et cetera. And so we do long time preventative maintenance service contracts for these MSOs and these outside cabinets, and been doing it for quite some time. And, you really have to be innovative to be able to repair and continually evolve the equipment in these types of outside plant cabinets. And I've been director of sales there for about 6 years and enjoy working for the company. And it's really neat to be on the cutting edge of the technology and understanding what's going on. And so that's kind of my
Okay,
background for where I'm at now.
perfect. Well, me and all of my audience will totally agree with you that it's essential infrastructure that you're the backbone of, right? The world would cease to exist without really good Wi-Fi, internet, and telecommunications. So thank you
Yeah.
for keeping those services in fine shape. With your work there, tell us a little bit about the trends that you're dealing with. Who are you serving? How has business been over the last few years?
Yeah. So the trend is interesting because everybody wants their speeds to be faster and higher. And, you hear about the 3G to 5G to 6G and all the way up to 10G. And what that G actually stands for is generation. And so that's the different levels of, as, like Rev 1, 2, and 3 as you grow, similar to the iPhone, whatever we're at now, 17, I think. It started off as one at one point, right? And so the evolution of speed, the need for speed, we'll call it, almost like a race car, but is always there. And most importantly, since COVID and everybody working at home, the download speeds to bring product or communication into your home, it's always been, call it 100 to 300 gigabyte kind of thing. Well, with the older systems out there, and there really wasn't a need before, but now for people, because they are working from home, they need that ability to go upload as well. And upload speeds are much slower than download speeds typically. So there's a big race out there for all the MSOs and stuff like that to be able to have the upload speed the same as the download speed. And so basically it's just increasing the technology on the upload side to be able to have that capability. And so all the MSOs are trying to do it tier one, tier two, tier three. And that's been a big concentration as of late for the MSOs, the multiple service operators that provide the signals and everything. Um, yeah, and so, we're trying to always improve the efficiency and reduce the downtime for the plants, right? And that's kind of like where we come into the lithium ion battery option too.
No? And so how does your positioning in your company, how do you work within that industry to provide that service?
Right, and good question because when these plants are out there, they're not they need to be maintained and so forth, and they're out remote or rural areas, or they're right on a street corner, like you mentioned before. And so there's either traffic situations, people will have a car accident, run into them, so they got to take care of them. And so basically, we're out there servicing these plants for the customers, and there's millions of these cabinets across the country between Department of Transportation, the MSO, railroad, all the different municipalities and stuff like that. And so we're out there providing a preventative maintenance program. Number one, to keep the plant properly working and going through it, just like you take your car in and change your oil. You do it every 2,000 miles or so, and you make sure the mechanic will run through your whole car and see if there's anything wrong or not. And just do a nice preventative maintenance program and stay on top of the troubles before they put your plant down. And that's why I mentioned we're in 17 different states. We have all our bucket trucks. So it's aerial as well that they have to go up in on plants. And so just being able to be there for the contracts to do the preventative maintenance kind of gets us displaced throughout the plants for the various customers.
So, what is the size of the company, Advanced Power Services? And you're in the sales department, but tell us the audience like a general ballpark, how many employees, even how big in revenue, if if those are publicly accessible numbers, so that we have a sense of how big the operation is.
Yes. So we're about 100 employees. And so I would say about 70% of our employees are technicians actually doing the physical work. And then we have a small sales department. And then we have a pretty big admin department as well. So there's a lot of, when it comes to processing orders to go out and fix a cabinet, say if a customer calls up and says, hey, if we lost service at this one cabinet, we need to deploy a technician and get out there. So the admins do that. That's about the other balance too. It's a private company, so I cannot share the revenue with you. So yeah, that's we're really efficient and focused on y- the technicians is our core, one of our main core, and then of course the products is another one. And we also do a lot of repair too. So we repair a lot of these power supplies and stuff like that that are in the cabinets.
And so, when we spoke earlier, you had talked about how you guys are uniquely positioned because there's a I think there's a demand, I would say, in the marketplace to go more efficient, longer lasting, more sustainable. And so, talk about the old technology that you're currently out there fixing or potentially replacing, and the new technology that's taking over, or even projects that are starting from day one implementing better battery solutions.
Yes. So some of the older technology is, the power supplies and stuff like that. And in general, just the cabinets can get older. And then there's the nodes and various other components. We call it active gear in the cabinet. And so a lot of that active gear does age out. I mean, the lifespan varies anywhere from possibly about 5 to maybe 15 years. It just depends on how long the customer wants to push the equipment and keep it running. Now, with the advent of people trying to increase their up speeds as well, now what they need to do is they have to replace that equipment with newer technology, or they try to use another, a module per se of the older technology on the download speed. But overall, a lot of the plant active gear components are kind of aging out or as we speak anyway. And so again, just kind of like your iPhone, you don't keep your iPhone more than 3 or 4 years kind of thing, just because the capability and the technology gets phased out, right? And so there's a lot of that. And so what we'll do is either we will repair a lot of that equipment and try to keep it, repair the legacy equipment, keep it limping along, if you will, or it does get just upgraded with new equipment because the demand for that upspeed requirement is there as well.
So then the newer, probably a little bit of a larger investment on the lithium ion side for the batteries versus the lead ones, but the return on investment over time with maintenance, better quality, better for the environment, better speed. Do your clients and customers see that return on investment, or is that a challenging conversation to sometimes have to try to educate someone to like go in this newer direction rather than kind of band-aiding the legacy stuff?
Yeah, great question. And so, from a battery perspective, and actually from a whole cabinet perspective, we're really looking to increase the efficiency as well. And again, like I said before, reduce downtime. And so from a battery perspective, you have the lead acid batteries in the plant that when the main shore power or the utility power goes down, that's when the batteries will kick in and, hopefully last a couple hours until a technician can either figure out why the shore power is out or until the utility comes back online. So, and then the other part of with the lead acid batteries compared to the lithium technology is basically lead acid batteries will last about 3 to 5 years, and they are heavy. They do off gas from just being the chemistry they are, hydrogen, etc., and can create a bit of an environment where if there was a lighter or some kind of spark, they could be a little bit dangerous. And then for lithium's much more efficient. They are sealed and they don't off gas very much at all, just a tiny little bit. And they also last a lot longer. So we have my battery systems are in a mobile application, like a Polaris Ranger EV, and it's a mobile application. And so it's buggy. They're out driving around, beating it up, and the battery packs in there. We've been doing that since 2012 with the Voltronics brand in the Polaris Ranger EV application. And we're going on 15 years that they're lasting compared to the 3 to 5 years that customers are normally accustomed to with lead acid technology. And the same thing carries over to the stationary in the outside plant where number one, it's not moving, so there's no vibration and stuff. So it takes away that additional condition. And I'm forecasting we'll probably see about 15 to 20 years it'll last. So the outside plant is an actual asset for the companies, right? And when you
Hmm.
have hundreds or thousands of cabinets everywhere, these are all assets, right? And then, and as a side note, with the mergers and acquisitions that are in this world that other companies buy other companies all the time, but you want to keep your asset dupe, dialed in, right? Because that's a big value to if you're going to sell or whatnot. And so keeping these assets up in proper working order is really key. And then when it comes to trying to talk customers into buying lithium compared to lead acid, well, it's 5 or 6x the cost. And they're like, whoa, that's a lot of money, right? And so you really got to educate them. That's kind of what I call it, is on the total cost of ownership. Because, hey, the upfront cost of capital right now, yeah, is a bit higher than you're normally paying with lead acid. However, if you look down the road in a 10 or 15 year, 5, 10, and 15-year window, the total cost of ownership way outweighs that. Plus, every time you got to replace a lead acid battery or anything in the cabinet, what do you have to do? You got to go and truck roll 2 guys out to go replace the equipment, right? You got to haul it out there and stuff like that. And a truck roll, depending on where you're at, if you're in the state of Texas, I mean, your systems could be across the whole country. And, that's an 8 hour back and forth drive, right? So you're getting rid of truck rolls. And like when you order a battery, the admin process, just to process a purchase order costs $150, just from an admin side. So you're getting rid of all these costs and then, trying to reduce that and compare that from a 3 to 5 year window versus a 15-year window. I mean, you could just imagine the savings from the span of 15 years versus 3 to 5. And one other last point too, I should have mentioned before is lead acid batteries, they continually need a current going into them to keep them charged up properly. And we call it a current draw. And it's about maybe zero point 0.3 amps to 3 amps. And that costs money because power has to continually go into the lead acid battery. Whereas lithium ion batteries, they don't. You charge them up and they just sit there and wait. Their self discharge rate is very, very, very low. And so now that's a huge cost savings too, especially if you're at some of these utility rates where you're at anywhere from 18 cents to 30 cents a kilowatt hour to keep electricity going into the battery. Well, now you just cut that off and you save all that money that would be on the OpEx operating side of for companies to look at the total cost of ownership value.
Well, as you explained it to me, it sounds like a no-brainer. But I'd be curious how your sales team handles probably that education, right? Is that done through like an automated process, or are you very much like, yeah, communicating with all of your potential clients, taking them through that education manually, and trying to show them the return on investment over time? How are those communications and education process unfolding?
Yeah, so typically we start off with a conversation with some data sheets and they have a need typically is where you're coming in. Or if you're just kind of cold calling them, you start off that way to try and educate them. And we'll kind of start off with email back and forth data sheets and then ideally we want to get in front of the customer. We'll do a show and tell, we'll bring the products along with us and show them the battery. And the one additional benefit is the lithium is about 30 to 40% lighter than lead acid too. So it's easier to carry around and stuff. And so we'll bring it to them. We'll go and demonstrate it. We'll have a meeting with it, a little show and tell kind of thing first. And, we have to have the proper people in the meeting too. Number one, the technical guys, and then the decision makers too. If the decision makers are the people who approve the expense, or if they have to have that person involved as well. And if we get past that hurdle, and they all like it, then the next phase would be to move in and do some testing. So we would put our batteries in a plant and then we would start testing and we can remotely monitor these things from our PC and then to show the customer that as well. So it's a very laborious task, if you will, to train them. But again, I mean, when you're talking something that's 5x the cost and it's going to last 15 years, I mean, investing that time into understanding the new technology is way worth it, right?
Yeah. And so I'm curious, because you guys are in 17 states, you've got 100 employees, like you mentioned 70% of them were techs. Does that mean that you and the sales team are basically on call going and doing these demos all across the country to potential new clients?
Yes. Yep. So we've done a couple of tests in Florida and the Panhandle, and then also the Midwest, and of course locally here in our backyard. So yeah, ideally we get over there. And so I mean, it's the getting in front of the customers. There's a lot of M&A going on right now through the industry, so a lot of people are kind of holding off. And then of course with the current economy the way it is, so getting these meetings and setting them and getting in front of the customer, it's a bit of a challenge. But yeah, that's if we do find an opportunity because they're hard to get, we kinda jump on it as soon as we can.
And in general, how do you do the kind of prospecting to get the opportunity to speak to your ideal customer profiles?
Yes, so we do the typical list, we buy a list of all the different customers out there, and there's about I forget what the number is, I wanna say there's over 4,000 of these MSOs out there kinda thing, and
Hmm.
then ISPs and so forth, and then we're also trying to expand into DOT as well, Department of Transportation, so all the traffic lights that you see too, a lot of them will have battery backup that use the very same power supplies and everything as the telecom. So we do by lists, of course we use LinkedIn, social media to some degree, and a lot of referrals. Referrals are really big in our industry. So we always try and have the techs or the different people in our different areas. You should be a little bit of a salesperson. Everybody should be, right?
Yeah. Well, you got to be excited about what you do, and you want to hopefully share that with the right people so that they know. If you don't tell people you're open for business, they don't know you're open for business, right?
Right.
Which what needs to happen. I'm curious. You touched on it earlier, but to kind of follow up more specifically, you're talking about trends. Whether it's the economy, the administration changes. What trends do you see currently that are working for you, like in your favor of growth in the company and expansion of your services? And what trends are challenging, working against you?
Yeah, I think some of the funding from an administrative standpoint is pretty good because the government wants to see everybody have internet, and so it's a BEAD program is one of the programs they do. They have raised I don't remember if it was 70 billion or something like that, trying to get so the government provides incentives for companies to go out and roll out better and cheaper and stuff like that. So that's a trend that helps us. It's a little bit. It's got a lot of red tape to it, for lack of a better term, because it is the government who's putting it out. And you got a lot of I's to dot and T's to cross to be able to qualify for that, right? But it's good. I think the efficiency is a big thing. We want to have better speeds, more equivalent. And, again, the biggest thing is no downtime. Look how much somebody when you lose your signal on your phone, you're like, oh my God, what's going on? So you always want to make sure your uptime on that is really good. And people that, one of the biggest trends lately is like people are lost without their phone. And so, 10, 20 years ago, it wasn't such a big deal. And, the social media is driving that, of course, and so uptime is a big trend right now because, and I think it's just going to maintain that way because I can't see anybody not having a cell phone in the future. I mean, I can't even imagine what it would evolve to, you know what I mean? And then, of
Yeah, I think
course,
it's gonna. Go ahead.
yeah, one sorry about that. One big thing of this whole, I would say, consumer perspective, it's power. So as things are getting more and more efficient, which requires less power, it's kind of crazy because the demand for more devices and stuff like that, people require more power. And I'll give you the best example is the data centers. The data centers, you can't pick up a newspaper without hearing about data centers everywhere. And the amount of power these guys consume is crazy. So that's another big thing too. And I was just watching Bloomberg this morning, and they were saying about how we're not worried about a defense race or a arms race or whatever they call that. They're more worried about a power race. Who's got power? Who doesn't have power? That's more important than arms. So that's a big
And that's
trend.
in particular to help to make sure, really the growth in AI is available because it's taking so much demand. And then that growth is kind of the backbone of emerging industries and the growth in the economy and so forth. So without enough energy, we could put ourselves into a very difficult position. Was that generally the sense of the reporting that you heard?
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. And just the pure demand for more power is like it's a definite economic driver too, which is great. So yeah, it just power, power, power.
Yeah. Well, it kind of ties into my next question. I was going to ask you, what's working really well for you and your business and on your projects?
Yeah, I think just the demand for a real big scenario is updating the infrastructure. So being able to get the new systems up there to meet the new requirements of the download speed is really a big driver. And then of course another big trend and technology driver is fiber. And so basically what happened was back in the day it was just two pieces of copper that ran to your phone line, and then that evolved over to a bigger piece of copper for like DSL and stuff like that. And then of course coax. Everybody has the coax in the back of their TV, right? And then the leap from coax is now fiber. So the perfect world, everybody would have fiber to their modem in their house, which is what I have with AT&T kind of thing. And so everybody trying to get to fiber is a goal. However, if you can still run the coax cable, um, you know, why invest all this trenching and tearing up the roads and permits and all that fun stuff to put fiber in when the coax still works? So it helps us in both ways. So basically, if we're still maintaining the same infrastructure, they just need new components. And when you upgrade a power supply or a node or any of that fun stuff for a cabinet, well, let's look at the batteries, right? I mean, if you're going to be doing that, try and do it all at once, right? And so that helps us a little bit. It's still pretty much it's a bit of a challenge, but again, and so I think that's probably the biggest benefit for helping us grow is the age of the infrastructure, the new requirements, and then the migration, whether you're going to keep the coax or upgrade to fiber.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, then following up on that, on the flip side, what are some of the most challenging or bottlenecks or time consuming activities that are slowing down the growth?
Yeah, I think in general are just the admin side of everything. So many of the companies are getting bigger and bigger. The admin side, just to get approval, it's becoming a vendor. You have a 10-page document you got to fill out to become an approved vendor. And so just the admin side of it is kind of a bottleneck. Permits as well. Things move slow. And as far as the specifications, educating the people so they understand the specifications because it's all new material and all new products. So it's an educational curve you got to bring them through as well. And so that takes time, right? And then, the testing, you know, we've rolled out a couple of different customers right now that have ordered about, I would say one of my customers ordered 150 of our lithium ion battery systems, another one about 300. And so, we're all waiting for the day we get one big order. They want 1,000 of them, right? And they're going to roll them out over the next 12 months. So getting to that point is all bottlenecks, right? And unfortunately, it's just, it's the nature of the beast, right?
Yeah. Well, a lot of companies these days are really looking to like smart AI solutions to, off task some of those repetitive things. Has you guys in the sales department or even in the larger like company from an administrative point of view, have you dove into much concept about introducing AI to take away some of that heavy lifting and excessive admin?
Yes, a little bit, but not too much. We're kind of one our CEO is he's a senior software guy and programming guy and stuff like that. So he's still kind of on the older systems a little bit, but we have a lot of systems that we designed or he designed for in-house with our existing computers and operating systems. And so they work really well. Like, we do a lot of, ticketing is a big thing that we do in the industry, so, you get the tickets in the system when you, have a repair go out or you're upgrading 500 cabinets kinda thing. So you have to document all this stuff, and, the system that he designed works really, really well for that, and it's actually a value add we bring to our customers because we have all this data that we logged and kept and store for them, so if they gotta go reference a cabinet way out in the boondocks somewhere and XYZ cabinet, oh, pull it up in the system, we can find it right away,
Perfect.
and so
Talking about customers, who right now, who's your ideal customer and how do you serve them best?
the ones that issue purchase orders. No, just kidding.
Spoken like a
Getting to
business
that deal.
owner.
Yeah, so categorically wise, so the MSOs, the multiple service operators, your Cox, Charter, Comcast. Everybody knows Comcast because of the big movies and stuff like that. Were the biggest, but Charter and Cox are actually in a merger right now. They announced that about 6 months ago. And then the smaller ones too, like I don't know, who's your internet at your facility there?
Well, it's at Telmax because I'm down in Mexico, so it might not even be
Okay.
part of the network there.
Yeah. So that would be a target for us as well. There's just a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 MSOs, ISPs, and even the Verizons and the AT&Ts and the T-Mobiles would be a customer. A lot of the DOTs in different cities and stuff like that are customers. Kind of anything. I mean, even we're getting into oil and gas a little bit because the telecommunications and oil and gas are really prominent, and so we're trying to diversify our portfolio to the customers we serve. And so those are probably a good mix of different customers and markets we serve.
Okay, excellent. So as you're looking forward to the future, what do you think are the biggest priorities for you guys over the next, let's say, 6 to 12 months to continue to grow and make 2026 a really great year?
Yeah, and it really comes from so it's a couple of things. Once acquire a customer and getting that customer landed, and then being able to again educate them too on all the different things we do. You may start off with just doing a preventative maintenance program for some cabinets or just rebuilding some of their equipment, and then hopefully grow into it and become a much more one-stop shop for that customer. So we can offer batteries, we can offer service, we can offer the ticketing system and all kinds of stuff. So really getting ingrained with them to offer our full suite of services to each customer. That's of course our goal. And of course that takes time, right? And then each of the customers have so many, if they're a bigger customer and they're in, all the states, each one has their different regions or districts that they work in. And so basically, when you're trying to acquire a customer, if there's a territory for the Southwest or just the Midwest. So now really that's almost becomes a new customer. So you have to build those relationships and stuff like that to get ingrained throughout the country with just one customer. So some of the goals are be able to bring on customers and get really in depth. And of course that takes time. And then of course maintain the existing customer base and grow with them. Try to be more cost effective because everybody's all at the bottom line these days, right? So more goals are reducing our bill of materials cost so our product price can go down because the lithium is a high cost of capital cost for customers. And so that would be another initiative that we hope to gain in 2026 and our volume. So obviously the more products you make that you can amortize all those costs from the BOM over a higher volume and that helps drive the cost down too.
Yeah, makes sense. Which parts of your operation or client process do you wish you was a little bit more streamlined so you could move towards those goals?
I'd say resources for technicians and, we're kind of in a smaller learning curve right now with, email marketing and stuff like that. That's another point I should have brought that up before too. I would love AI to be able to help us on the sales side and prospecting and stuff more down the line because that's the old fashioned cold calling and stuff is difficult, right? And just to do and start cold calling MSOs off the internet per se, you're just going to get that person that's going to try and sell you your home internet service. You're like, no, I need to talk to the outside plant engineer. Can you give me his name and number? It just doesn't work like that. And I've been doing sales for a long time, and so nobody wants to talk to a sales guy. I don't even want to talk to a sales guy. So it's like, you have that aura or whatever you want to call it. That you got to kind of penetrate that.
Yeah.
And
Or
maybe there's an AI way to do that.
oh yeah, yeah, there certainly is. We can talk about it. But I was thinking maybe no one likes to talk to a salesperson until you want something very particular, and then you want to talk to the right salesperson who's going to sell you exactly what you need, right? But most of the time, we're not really clear on exactly what we need, so it becomes a little bit of a challenging process.
Correct.
As we move towards the finish line here, if you could have a magic wand and you could automate or change one or two things either in your workflow or in the industry, what would they be and why?
Hmm. Great question. I guess I'd have to say if I had a magic wand, I mean, the biggest thing is people's understanding of technology, I think would be helpful. We're in a very niche little industry, and I come from the hydraulics and the battery industries prior, and it was a bit easier. And being able to be more open to different technology, I think would be a nice that would be beneficial. Yeah, I don't know. I think the admin process, you know, it's like when you go to a doctor's office and you sign your name on 14 different forms and it's the same information. It's just like, can't you use the information from the first form? Right.
Yeah, everyone wants a magic wand to get rid of the admin.
Yeah, the admin side is it's just crazy. And it's like, with all of our smart devices and stuff like that these days, it should just be approval processes should be a no-brainer, and I think taking some of the what is the word I'm looking for? The lawyer side out of it. Everything is got to be approved by a lawyer these days and so forth. And so that's challenging. Nobody reads through all those except in, the documents.
Except the person who wrote it.
Yeah, right.
And maybe the person who eventually has to sign it. Here's the last question for you, Brennan. Where do you think the renewable energy sector, the telecommunications sector, will all within that, is this like the backbone of infrastructure for the Western world? Where are we headed in the next 5 to 10 years, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think just more efficiency again to kind of keep that one on the top, and then more of adaptability for like if you do have to upgrade a system, do you have to replace the whole cabinet? It can be more of a modular effect where you can try to, improve that. I think that's going to be a trend that people will want to see more often. Plug and play, if you will, for lack of a better term, to kind of end that note. And I just think it's just more prevalent too, because in my folks live in a remote area way up in northern Wisconsin, and getting service up there is really difficult, and then consistent service too. So I think providers are always looking for, so if there's a population in some certain area, let's say it's 10,000 people that don't have internet or anything. So I think those guys the providers will try to market and put the systems in play to be able to serve and have those customers because it's just another customer they're going to bring on, right? So I think on the more side of it, you just see more systems, more continuity, and just an increase of overall service for everywhere. I mean, even down by where you're at. I mean, maybe 5 or 10 years ago, your system wasn't as prevalent there, right? And so,
Wasn't available. Yeah.
exactly right. So, I think that's where you'll see more infrastructure, updating the old infrastructure. I think those are probably, I should have started with that. Those are probably the two keys where you want to see it. Then, of course, going from the older technology to fiber, because fiber cabling and stuff like that, I mean, that's at this point in time is be all end all because the amount of information you can run across a hair strand of fiber is just incredible.
Amazing. Well, I've really enjoyed the conversation, Brendan, and I'm sure my audience would have gotten a lot out of it too. Before we leave, where can people get a hold of you if they're interested to learn more about your company, get a hold of you personally if they have some follow-up questions? Please give the details to the audience.
Yeah, you can either go to our website, advancedpowering.com, and check us out there, or Voltronics is our other company website, which is voltronix.com. And then, of course, I mean, my cell phone number is, more of an old school guy with the phone. So, I mean, you can reach me at my cell phone number, which is, those are probably the best ways to get a hold of me.
Yeah, and I also, we connect a little bit on LinkedIn, so you got a profile there if people are on the platform and want to
Right.
check out Brendan's
Yep.
work. And of course, to my audience, if you've enjoyed the show, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel, share with somebody else that might be interested in becoming a client or having a conversation with Advanced Power Services. And Brendan, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Really appreciate it. And to our audience, that wraps up another episode of Blue Ocean Solutions Podcast. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you very much. Bye.